The programming on Metro TV does not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Metro Council, the mayor, or Metro government staff.
Welcome to another installment of Leadership Landscape, where we go inside the minds of local community leaders and allow them a chance to offer some keen insights into how they see themselves and, most importantly, explore just what makes them tick. I'm Kurt Jacobs, host of Leadership Landscape, where previous interviews have included leaders from the world of politics, religion, business, sports, law, community activism, and civic engagement. Today, our guest is Archbishop Joseph E. Kurtz of the Archdiocese of Louisville. Now, for those of you who don't know our guests, allow me to read some of their bio. He was born in 1946 in Mahanoy City, Pennsylvania. Archbishop Kurtz is the son of a coal miner and a grandson of East European immigrants. In 1968, Archbishop Joseph E. Kurtz earned a Bachelor's of Divinity, and in 1972 earned a Master of Divinity degree from St. Charles Borromeo Seminary in Philadelphia. In March 1972, he was ordained a priest for the Diocese of Allentown, Pennsylvania, and in 1976, he received a master's degree in social work from the Marywood School of Social Work in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Archbishop Kurtz served 27 years from 1972 to 1999 in the Diocese of Allentown, Pennsylvania, in charge of social services, diocesan administration, and parish ministry. Seminary receiving the distinguished title of Monsignor in 1986. Very impressive. In 1999, Archbishop Kurtz was named the Bishop of Knoxville, Tennessee until 2007. He was also a member of the 2002 class of Leadership Knoxville. His Holiness Benedict XVI appointed Most Reverend Joseph E. Kurtz as the 4th Archbishop and 9th Bishop of the Archdiocese of Louisville on June 12, 2007, replacing then retiring Archbishop Thomas C. Kelly. And Kurtz was installed as Archbishop of Louisville on August 15, 2007. Now, how is this for leadership, ladies and gentlemen? The Archdiocese of Louisville is the oldest Roman Catholic archdiocese west of the Appalachians and was founded as the Diocese of Bardstown in 1808, transferred to Louisville in 1841, and elevated to Archdiocese in 1937, covering 24 counties, hosting a Catholic population of greater than 200,000 individuals. Wow. In November 2010, Kurtz's fellow bishops elected him to a 3-year term as Vice President of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, serving on the executive and administrative committees. Considered well-liked and solidly orthodox, it makes him a leading candidate for President of the USCCB, as it is called, in 2013, replacing the current President, Archbishop Timothy Dolan of New York. Kurtz is the Vice Chancellor as well of the Board of the Catholic Extension Society, the Episcopal Advisor to the Catholic Social Workers National Association, and serves on the Board of Trustees of the Catholic University of America and on the Board of Directors of the National Catholic Bioethics Center and on the boards of, you're a busy man, on St. Charles Seminary in Philadelphia and Leadership Louisville, just to name a few. Some have called Archbishop Kurtz the smiling conservative, similar in style and approach to Archbishop Timothy Dolan of New York, making from time to time being mentioned to even head some larger dioceses of Chicago or Baltimore. Now, it is an honor to have you here to join our gallery of guests, Archbishop Kurtz.
I'm
it's really an honor.
With you. Thank you.
Now, I want to mention, and we try to keep these shows timeless, you just came back from Rome, the Vatican, and visited with Pope Francis. Can you elaborate on that? Are you jet-lagged?
I did. No, not at all. Actually, I guess I'm on a spiritual high, you could say. Cardinal Dolan, as the president, and I visited, as we do once a year, the curial offices. And not all the time do we get a chance to see the Holy Father. We had I'm going to say an interview, actually an audience that was a half an hour long on just this past Monday. And it was a thrill. Speaking the same way as you and I are speaking.
Wow.
Pope Francis is very impressive.
Really?
Very impressive. I came away afterwards and somebody interviewed me and I said, well, you know, I think if I had my choice of who might be my own pastor in a parish that I belong to, I think I might choose someone like him.
Since we're on the subject of popes, did you ever meet Pope Benedict?
Oh, sure.
You
of course.
did? Oh, okay.
Yes,
I wanted to make sure to bring that up.
I've had great opportunities to meet him as well as Pope John Paul II.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, what drives you to have the career that you've had in the Catholic Church?
Well, of course, I would call it's the difference between a career and a vocation. And I would truly say it's a calling that I began to experience way back when I was in 10th grade. It seems like eons ago. But it's that sense that somehow there's something beyond myself.
Okay.
And of course, centered in the person of Christ. And that desire to be loved by God and experience that love that God has for all people in Christ Jesus motivates me to serve others. I hope to serve with joy.
And no one in your family history was in the clergy of any
You know
kind
what? Believe it or not, no. And I've searched the genealogy. No, there hasn't been. My mother, of course, was deeply religious, and I probably credit the fact that there were 5 in my family. I was the baby, and my brother George, who was actually the 4th youngest, was born with Down syndrome, and growing up with a special child, which most people would say, well, gee, is that a cross? Actually, was a great joy because it made all of us look maybe a little deeper into what's important in life. And when all is said and done, what are the things that I really want to, in a sense, put my energy into? So probably family, more than anything, was very important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whom do you credit most influential in your life, Archbishop? And it could be more than one, personal or professional.
Gosh, I shouldn't have answered that other question so quickly.
Well, maybe you answered it.
Because I think I did a little bit. I think maybe in early days it was my mother, and indirectly my brother George. Not so much necessarily from what he said, but maybe what he brought out of me. Okay. Because I think he gave me a great love for the underdog, if you would, for the person who doesn't always win, and I think I would credit also my family as being people of faith. My dad, as you said earlier, my dad was a coal miner, and he didn't wear his religion on his sleeve, but there was a goodness in my father and my mother, and I think family probably was the most influential. Okay. Yeah.
What was the biggest professional or personal regret of your life? Do you have one, or disappointment maybe?
Well. That's a hard question to answer. I guess probably the times that I didn't take advantage of deepening friendships and maintaining friendships, because what happens often, and it probably was the hardest thing for me when I would receive changes of assignment as priest, it kind of was a little bit of a tug on you to complete one place and go to another, and then to try not to interfere with whoever was succeeding you, and so there was that reluctance. So thank God for the internet. I now have a chance through tweets and Facebook and emails to have much more contact than I had in my early days. But I think that would probably be the biggest regret. I'm kind of a driven person. And so whatever's the project in front of me, I try to throw myself into.
Understandable.
And there's the tendency then not to go back and remember people who are special in my life.
Now, on the flip side of that, Archbishop, what is your biggest professional triumph or personal? It could be more than one.
Well, certainly I think when I felt that call to be a priest, it was a call to be a parish priest. And I had the privilege in 1988, it took me a while because of my work in Catholic Charities to finally be assigned as a pastor. But in 1988, I became a pastor of a smaller church, and then in 96 of a larger church back in Pennsylvania. And I think the qualities of being a pastor, of, in a sense, living in the midst of the people I serve, that probably would be the greatest experience that I've had.
What's the best piece of advice ever given to you, Archbishop? Again, it could be more than one, personal or professional.
Be yourself and be the best self you can be. No, I mean that, because,
I agree.
And I'll tell you, my family never said it that way. But when I look back, I forget who, I think it was actually a basketball coach who said that to me, and not just to me, but to all of us. He said, now be yourself, but be the best self you can be. And I often, when I'm preaching to teenagers or young adults, I tend to go back to that sense, because we shouldn't pretend to be someone we're not. We should uncover the gifts God has given us, but also develop them and use them for the sake of others. So I think that would be the best advice.
Now, you're one of our more unique leaders that we've had on the program, in the sense that you talk to large groups on a regular basis. So I'm curious to the answer to this question. Can you define leadership in one word? It can be more than one if you choose.
Well, vision would be the word. Yeah, vision, because leaders do many things that many other people can give. But if the leader does not have, what comes from the Old Testament? Without vision, the people perish. And close to that, and I think it's related to vision, is the capacity to communicate that vision. In other words, to inspire.
Okay.
And so if I had two words, it would be that when all is said and done, the leader develops a vision, or allows a vision to develop in his heart or in her heart, and then inspires others by sharing that vision.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if someone asked you, what does Archbishop Kurtz stand for? What would you tell them? Not what they would think of you, but what would you say about yourself?
Well, someone who serves with joy, I hope. Someone who...
I can sense that in the short time we've been together.
Gosh, I got to hang around you more.
Well, how about that?
No, I think that sense of I hope that people will see, of cultivating a sense of joy that I think comes from a life of prayer, and sharing that joy with others. St. Thomas Aquinas, it goes back a couple of years, and I wish I knew the Latin, but he basically said to contemplate and to share the fruits of your contemplation.
Okay.
So I think often if there's let's say a diocesan problem or some issue that I'm trying to deal with, in prayer, I end up often coming away with an awareness that I may not be the one to solve that problem. And there's a sense of joy in being able to reach out and work with others in identifying whatever is the challenge in front of us.
If you could change one thing in your life or in general, what would that be, Archbishop?
Oh, I'd want to have a more pastoral heart.
Really?
I'd want to, selfishness and looking after ourselves is part of the human condition, don't you agree? That, in other words, who gets up in the morning and doesn't have some thought about themselves?
Sure.
And I think that's why I think that probably was what most attracted me to Jesus in the Gospels. Was now of course, Son of God, he had a little bit of an edge on us on that, but this sense of his taking joy in being able to enter into the lives of others and to bring God's power and mercy to them. So I think that notion of a pastoral heart, as I see it, is the ability to so trust in God that you risk forgetting yourself a little bit so that you can concentrate on serving others.
Now, you had mentioned...
I'm imperfect on that.
You had mentioned vision on the leadership question earlier.
Yeah.
Could you describe in detail a particular scenario or incident where you utilized your own philosophy on leadership?
Well, one thing that comes to mind actually goes back to around the late 70s. I became the director of what we call the Social Action Bureau, and it was a small staff. And one of the things that I knew in my study of social work was important was to be able to really engage and work with other people. And that vision of knowing that I didn't have all the gifts, and in fact, if we were going to help people, if we were going to promote the church agenda, and in this case it was to be involved in social justice and action for others, then I was going to need to learn from others. And that experience of being engaged mostly with lay people, lay men and women, there were probably about 5 or 6 of us at that time. That experience allowed me to put into action that vision of collaborating with others. Yeah.
This might be somewhat of a loaded question, so feel free to answer in any fashion you want.
Sure.
Do you think
you've gotten my interest?
Yeah, right. Do you think there's a difference in today's religious leaders than in past generations?
Well, there's
or I can make it easier.
Let me put it another way.
Leaders.
Let me put it
How about
another
that?
way. Well, there's a difference, perhaps, I think, in the way we look at leaders.
Okay.
It seemed to me that that leadership, that we accepted and revered heroes in the past much more than we do today. Today, it seems to me that when we see someone who's in a leadership capacity, we just want to find out something that shows that they're human. And of course, that's as easy to do. But But I think I'm just thinking of, I just saw the movie on a plane, believe it. That's the only time I see movies, seems to be on plane. But I saw this movie,
audience.
42, which was with Jackie Robinson.
Right.
And there was such a sense of him being a hero. And yet, in many cases with sports heroes today, I think we look for something that might show their imperfection and less than revere them in that capacity. And I think the same is true with religious leaders. I would say growing up, it was a lot easier for me to look at other religious leaders, and including my own pastor growing up, and see that pastor as somewhat of a hero to me, someone I would like to be, quote, when I grow up.
Do you feel, I'm trying to think how to couch this, do you feel that religion and technology, is there any correlation there, since we're heading into an era of social media, or we are in it?
Oh, I think there's a great correlation. Pope John Paul II did, in the late 70s, did one of his encyclicals called Fides in Ratio, Faith and Reason. And of course, where did universities begin? They began in houses of theology in Paris and Bologna.
Good point.
And so I think at this point, people would like to make a great divide between science and faith, between technology and religion. But in fact, people who believe that they're living their lives with pure science, there's some trust in that maybe the trust might be that someday science will answer all their questions. But I would say when you get into the ultimate questions, we go beyond what is surface and we go deeper. And I think that's exactly what religion does. Somebody told me that religion is kind of like coming into a new country. You ask all the questions. Who are you? Where are you coming from? And where are you going? Well, I think those ultimate questions, science has trouble answering those on a purely empirical level. My sense would be that there is a great marriage between faith and reason, between religion and science. And part of the task that I guess is mutual, my task is to be open to what is seen in religion, and to begin to ask the question, is all progress, is all advances true progress, which of course is the difference between what I can do and what I ought to do or should do. So no, I'd love to have a special program just talking about the philosophy of those connections.
Now you have a few things on your person, as I call it. You have a ring and a cross. Can you explain to the audience what those represent?
Sure, I'm happy to. Well, the pectoral cross, and it's called pectoral because it's worn on the chest, is meant to be close to the heart. I tell people, and especially young people that I'm talking to, that obviously the cross is meant to let them recall that Christ is the center of their lives, but even more so that I recall that Christ is the center. And the Episcopal ring is very much like a nuptial ring, in that the bishop is called to have a relationship of fidelity with the people he serves. And the ring is really meant to be a reminder to me of that commitment that I was asked to make as a bishop in serving the people, especially the people of the local church where I serve. Yeah.
That's interesting. I wanted you to explain that.
Yeah. No,
they're
very good. This particular ring I got as a gift from somebody. I should say it's a used ring, which is good. It was the ring that was given to every bishop at the Second Vatican Council.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's Christ with Peter and Paul. It has been, just a few years. So I'm into secondhand things.
I like that. That's nice. That's the next question's interesting, since you just took a trip over to Italy. But if you were granted 2 weeks right today, the diocese said, get lost, Archbishop. Do whatever you want. Where would you go? Who would you take with you? What would you do?
Wow.
Assuming no technology, you really had to kind of get off the grid, as I call it.
Wow. Well, I'm going to show that I'm an introvert by this
That's
answer.
fine.
I think I go once a month down to Gethsemane for a day of prayer.
Beautiful place.
And I usually go on a Sunday at 5:30 for evening prayer. And I tell people I leave Tuesday morning. I have a morning prayer, mass, and breakfast, and it still ain't 7 o'clock. So I get up so early. I think what I would love to do, maybe for those 2 weeks, is maybe shadow one of the monks is just have a chance. You know, there's probably both a serenity that attracts me, and there's probably a glamorized approach that I'm looking at it, going once a month as opposed to living the whole time.
Sure.
But I think that notion of contemplating and of being able to enter into a very simple life and a simple routine is what would attract me. So I guess it would be a rather cheap vacation.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It's very insightful and introspective that you would want to do that.
Yeah.
And you do go
I go
on a
once
pretty
a month.
regular basis.
I do, and I enjoy doing it each time. So it's the present abbot there is very interesting. He tells people, including myself, he says, you know, there's a great interest in our culture right now in contemplation. He says the difficulty is everybody wants to do it in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And the fact of contemplation is something that requires us to really empty ourselves and in a sense step back. Yeah.
Now, in my research of you, I came across an interesting fact, that, and this is not towards Catholicism at all,
Sure.
but there's been a challenge for having more priests on the bench, so to speak, coming up through the hierarchy. Is there any kind of thought process on what is causing that in our culture or society?
Do you mean on people being called to the priesthood or
Correct.
responding?
Correct.
To it?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. It's a good.
Because I think it's a form of leadership and maybe where we are in the country.
No, it's a good
or culture.
question. It's a good question. I think first of all, culturally, when I was growing up, the vocation of a priest was much more valued. I'm talking from secular terms.
Okay.
I grew up in a little coal town. The priest was an educated person. There were others, doctors, lawyers, many others who were educated, but they were still very much the minority. So there was kind of a secular thrust. And I think there was also religion itself was held in great esteem as a way of seeking your vocation, but also of building character in people. You still hear it here in Louisville, where people in businesses say, "Boy, we love to hire somebody who came from one of our Catholic schools because they come with great character." And I'm always pleased when I hear that. The good news is that actually we're seeing a bit of an upturn. I think maybe 6-7 years ago we had 3 men studying for the priesthood, and we have 17 now. So there's a bit of an increase coming. We also have a phenomenon that wasn't in the case, and that was lay leadership.
Okay.
And so both with deacons who are not lay but are part of the holy orders, that's a phenomenon that's just been the last 40 years.
Really?
It's
Okay.
been a restored
Oh,
diaconate.
okay.
And then many lay leaders, even lay theologians, people who are going to study theology as part of their lay profession. That was something rather rare in the past. So I think there's a combination, but it's funny, in speaking recently with Pope Francis, that was one of the things he asked about, was the climate for vocations to the priesthood and religious life. And we were able to say that actually, while it's not going back to maybe what we experienced in the 40s or the 50s, it certainly is showing there's more interest, at least among a more defined group. So I'm kind of happy. Our St. Meinrad Seminary has 160. They have the most that they've had in a long time.
I was going to ask this question from when you mentioned earlier about you kind of had an epiphany as a young person, this calling, if you will, which kind of is the preface for my next question. If you could write a letter to your young self, I guess then Joseph Kurtz,
yes,
what would you tell him?
Knowing
what you know now.
Well, I think I would say take the advice of your parents to be yourself.
Okay.
And to understand that there are gifts that God has given you that you haven't even begun to develop. So in a sense, I would say life is a great adventure. Uncovering, if you will, not only the gifts God has given us, but the gifts that you uncover and celebrate in other people's lives. And I think I would say take your time to step back each day. Of course, we call that prayer. But to step back each day and to be able to appreciate that, so you don't get into a rat race.
Dog chasing its tail.
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
And I say that because there have been times, in hectic times, that I'll start to take shortcuts on, well, maybe I should just get my work done and not take time to pray. But I think that would be the advice that I would give. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Very honest.
Yeah.
Now, this question we ask all of our guests, younger or older. You're like our 128th guest, roughly, so everyone does not get out of the chair without this one.
Okay.
God forbid, you're a man of the cloth, if you were not here tomorrow, in other words, something happened to you, how do you want to be remembered?
Well, I guess as one who was joyful in serving others. I think that would probably be, when you become a bishop, you're asked to give an Episcopal motto. Some slogan, it's usually, hopefully it's from sacred scripture. And I took as a model something that came from, it's at the end of a number of Psalms, but Psalm 31 certainly has it. 31 verse 25 said, take heart and have courage, all you who hope in the Lord. Hope in the Lord was the phrase that is my Episcopal motto. And that notion of hope gave me a sense of joy, that there's a joy coming because of a trust, that God is in our lives, that there is a plan. And it's different, as Pope Francis just said, it's not the same as optimism, which says everything will always go exactly as you want it. No, there'll be ups and downs in lives, but there's a basic trust and joy that I think is recognized in our world. Blessed Teresa of Calcutta, people of all different backgrounds, religious backgrounds, all admired. Here's a woman of joy who served others. And I wouldn't mind being in that procession.
There you go.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what an honor it is to have you join the gallery of guests on Leadership Landscape.
Thank you
so much. Keep up the great work, Archbishop. Hope you're around for quite a long time here in the community. Thank you very much. If you have any general feedback, comments, or a recommendation for a suitable guest, feel free to email me at kurtjacobs@leadershiplandscape.org and check out our other interviews at our website, leadershiplandscape.org. Until next time, I'm Kurt Jacobs. Thanks for watching.
Metro TV, a public service of Louisville Metro government.